So here at the Convention Centre in Perth, I'm at AusBioInvest. In the last couple of days, the biotech community here in Perth have got together at AusBioTech and the AusBioInvest event. And today I've been recording conversations with speakers as they come off the stage here at AusBioInvest, and we put them together in this podcast episode for you today. So first in this episode, I spoke to Dr Nilay Thakar, principal of Arch Venture Partners in the US, and we went inside the mind of a venture capitalist and how to build an innovative biotech company. Then later in the episode, you'll hear from Dr. Daniel Getz, CEO and co-founder of Myeloid Therapeutics in the US, about leveraging opportunities to accelerate innovation in Australia and the US. And then later in the episode, you'll hear my conversation with Dr. Arjun Goyal, also from the US, co-founder and managing director of Vida Ventures. We talk about translating groundbreaking science into new medicines in the 21st century. So it's been a great couple of days here at AusBioTech. Thank you so much to the team at AusBioTech for letting me set up here at AusBioInvest and have a chat with the different speakers. It's been great for companies to be able to talk about what they're doing directly to investors, and for investors in the biotech space to hear about all these great innovations coming through, to hear about how investors should think about biotech, what the current state is, and hopefully this episode today gives you a flavour for some of those things. So let's do it. Collaboration starts with conversation, Team HealthTech. Let's make it happen.
This is Talking HealthTech with me, Peter Birch, featuring content and community about technology in healthcare.
I am Nilay Thakar. I'm a principal at Arch Venture Partners. It's a life science and physical science focused venture capital fund. Currently operating out of our 12th fund in closed about a couple of months ago for about $3 billion total, with $9 billion assets under management. What we do on a daily basis is we find cool novel technologies and science across the world, and we try to turn them into companies. So we come in pretty early, seed, Series A stages of the company, building process and take them to the clinic or to the market. And what I do myself is essentially that. I build new companies in the biotech space, predominantly focus myself on therapeutics.
Yeah. Did I hear that you're from Boston as well?
I'm based in Boston, Cambridge,
yeah,
but
yeah,
I'm originally from Brisbane.
Yeah, good on you. Is that true that the time to get from Boston to Perth is the same time, to get halfway to the moon or something like that?
I work very hard on my jokes. I Googled that it takes 3 days to go from the Earth to the moon, and it took me a day and a half to get here. So
yeah, halfway there.
Yes.
Well, then you got to get back. So that's,
and then it completes the trip.
Yeah, good on you. Good on you. Well, look, talk to me a bit about, you went through a great session this morning. Talk to me a bit about the presentation that you gave to the delegates here and some of the key themes that came out of that.
I think the goal was to quote-unquote educate people on how at least we at Arch think about building new companies. I suppose my not knowing what the audience looks like, and I think I have a better understanding now. I think these are pretty seasoned folks, and they clearly know what they're doing. Maybe I've wasted a bunch of their time, but it's hard to cover what is essentially an 18, 24-month process of building a new company in under 12 minutes or so.
Yeah.
But I wanted to give a general sense of the way we think about things and what we look out for and what we are a little bit averse to. And I was hoping to convey that, and I hope I did, in terms of what people should look out for and how to build companies.
Yeah. You broke down 3 pillars. I remember 3 pillars for those organizations, and one was relating to people, and I found it really came through that you emphasized the point around finding people with the strong relationships and the credibility, because it's for the size of the ecosystem, it's a relatively small kind of gene pool in terms of the number of people actually operating in the space. So that sounds like something that you put a lot of weight on, is finding people who are well connected in the space. Is that right? So the relationships are really important?
Yeah, I mean, the industry's small, and I'm talking even in the United States.
Right.
You'd be surprised. You can pretty much connect with anyone in the biotech space within 3 degrees of connection. It's a small world. Your credibility, reputation, I'm not just talking venture funds, I mean people in the companies, scientists in academia that do entrepreneurial stuff. If you're in the space, people will know what you've done and how successful you've been, and how you are as a person to deal with. in a pretty easy way. So it's important that you maintain everything that you do has credibility to it, has integrity, and you're doing it for the right reasons. So whether that's to get drugs in the clinic or patient life saved, or whether that has the metric of billions of dollars in revenue, etc., and a combination of both. So that relationship really matters, and there's a lot of really good people who can run companies. There's a dearth of exceptionally good people that can run companies, and the reason I say that is the really good people can get products in the clinic or companies to a financial success in good times.
Yes.
They'll struggle in the toughest of times, and they'll get there eventually. They'll just burn through a lot more cash and struggle a little bit more than what I mean with the excellent people, which are capable of navigating anything you throw at them and getting companies to with products in the clinic or market and to a success.
Yes.
And so once you find them, you do everything in your means to make sure you hold on to them with your dear life and make sure you marry them with the right exciting opportunities that are worthy of their talent and get them there.
Yeah. Did I understand the summary near the end there that, basically to build a successful biotech company, you got to find really good science and heaps smart people and just give them lots of cash. And then
Pretty much.
That's it.
Pretty much. There's I think I had that caveat. It's not the reason why we or our peers have been so incredibly successful, it's not a secret sauce thing.
Yeah.
There's nothing we do differently, honestly, and it's not something that I can't share. It's the basics. It's a lot of hard work. We have that, but at the same time, it's understanding where your faults lie and doing something about it, which I be a little bit of a brutally honest person, and you can do that when you love Australia. I think Dan noted that as well. I think we see our faults, but we ignore them, and it hurts me in saying that, but it's true. One point I think Dan noted really well is everyone sees Australia as someone that digs up the earth and sells whatever comes out, whether that's egg or mining. And then anything else is basically industries around that. Your telecom and finance are all basically around that. No one knows Australia for what it used to be, thanks to CSIRO back in the 90s and before then, right? Which is a pinnacle of actual scientific technological innovation. So that narrative needs to change again. We need to be seen as someone that can actually innovate in a meaningful way and not just, dig up the earth. No offense to the industry
No,
here,
it's
but
important for sustainability.
and it's not a zero-sum game either. Just because you excel in innovation doesn't mean you've shut down mining or any. These industries can happily coexist.
Yes, yeah.
So
Such a great message. And lastly, I got the theme, the sense that, looking forward into the future, there's a lot of resilience is going to be needed for those operating in this space. And, you build success in the difficult times, and you need to prepare for those. I think sustaining growth through difficult times is hard with some of the final points that you raised. Is that about right?
yeah, I mean, I think that was to my point on, let's speak to what I was asked to speak about, which is building biotech companies.
Yeah.
I see that and the industry generally sees that as a recurring theme. There's a lot of glamour around building new companies because there's a lot of hope and excitement that comes with it, money that flows into companies with that. But this is unfortunately or fortunately, a very painful field. We're not making the next dog walking app. We're making a therapeutic. And nothing wrong with the tech side of things. It's just, in our space, if you make something, people will buy it because we are trying to solve medical needs here with desperate, where patients are waiting desperately for a meaningful solution. In the tech side of things, you're making the product isn't the tough bit. Actually selling it, like, Spotify, for example, for what you're doing, that's the hard part. How many people will actually use your product, right? So it's a little bit of that, 180 with us. So the goal with that is there's a lot of glamour on making new companies and doing things, but very quickly you realize that it's a very painful journey to actually make a product that goes through the clinical trials and eventually gets approved, and it's a 10-15 year journey. So people need to be aware and understanding that it's going to be a tough, long road, and you need to be prepared for how to manage that when times aren't good, whether it's because science failed and you need to pivot to a different science or a different indication, or whether that's because the money market's dried up and you need to find ways to bootstrap and find capital. So I hope I can address that next time, but generally haven't seen many people talk about how tough it is to navigate and how to navigate in tough times.
Thanks.
Daniel Getz. I'm from Sydney originally. I live in the United States now, in Massachusetts, Cambridge.
And what brings you to AusBioInvest today?
I was invited to come and give some insight into my experiences building biotech companies in the United States.
Yeah.
And also, we're trying to increase our footprint in Australia as a company. The company I'm started and been running now, Myeloid Therapeutics. I'm looking to work with governments and local companies to leverage a couple of things: expertise, tax incentives.
Yeah.
And then also I have a vested interest in trying to do good things for the Australian biotech community.
Yeah. I took some notes during your session as well, because you took us on a bit of a journey through your career as well. Talk to me a bit about, not about each role and everything like that, but how, one thing I took from it, which aligned with the previous session as well, which was, in the end, a lot of it comes down to relationships and building that credibility that really starts to bridge a lot of those gaps.
It's really hard because, I come from a background that is not... I was really the first person to finish university, go and do a postgraduate degree. Fortunately, my family, more people have now. And I did that in Sydney, Australia.
Yeah.
Right? So this isn't an area where there's a lot of biotech happening. So finding those people to help build it is hard, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of it had to be done bootstrapping, scrapping things together. I moved to the United States, and I was naive when I moved there. I didn't move, if I could go back in time, I would have moved to Cambridge immediately, because that's where they're South San Francisco, but I moved to Chicago, which was good because there was a lot of great work, and I saw eye to eye with some of the people I was working with there. So that worked out quite well. But relationships are the main driver of it. And trust. People need to know how to trust. And that's hard. You just don't do that overnight.
Yeah.
And so within the Australian ecosystem, there wasn't any, I didn't have any relationships. In the United States, I had to build them. So, like they always say, your first millions are hardest to make. I think your first biotech's always the hardest to build too. It's very hard. Like Arch and Nilay, they're a great venture firm, right?
Yeah.
As a 26-year-old, when I started that first company, I wasn't going to get a $200 million check to build it. So that's what I've learned. I've been very lucky to have, good mentors, good, over time build good relationships. And I have a great set of investors today that, really support what we're doing. And it takes a lot of money to do what we do. So,
No, it does. And some of the recurring themes happening today, I believe, as well, is trying to understand how to get perhaps funding and interest from the US. And a point that you raised was that if you're looking to get US money, you've just got to be in the US.
Yeah, I think
it sounds simple, but it's.
Look, here's an example. Immediately after the session, we had two companies come up and present their technology, Australian companies.
Yeah.
The technology, one was from Yale and the other one was from Penn, University of Pennsylvania. So it makes me scratch my head and say, why are you going to the United States and taking technology that is not being developed there? Because, let's take Yale and Pennsylvania, University of Pennsylvania. These are amazing institutions, right? If these technologies were really cutting edge,
yeah, right.
Arch would have taken them.
Yeah, okay.
Atlas, right? And so it really makes me wonder what's going on. And they're probably great technologies, and people make mistakes all the time. So I haven't dug into them, so I don't know. But it really does make me question.
Yeah.
That. So if you want US money, you got to go to the US and get it. You got to build those relationships. But I think the focus needs to be more on how we bring US money, or how we build this kind of, Austrade would love this, but some sort of bilateral agreement, relationship where, the venture capitalists in the United States are embedded within the system here.
Yeah. Because that's the point that you said as well too, was that, we've got to get out of this mentality of the US versus Australia, or just because that happened in China, that we need to do something identical here, right? If it's happened to humans, it's relevant, right?
Look, I actually believe very strongly that the United States is a very amazing country, and if you don't see what happened in the pandemic with getting this vaccine made, that was unprecedented.
Yes.
And that took every ounce of effort. Don't get me wrong, there's discombobulation and noise and it's a crazy place. It always has been from the get-go of the constitutional debates, right, in the late 1700s. It's always been crazy, but when you put them against a wall, they're going to get it done. And as Australians, we also have our own cultural identity that I think is also amazing. These things don't have to be distinctly, competitive. We take advantage of the things that we are good at and try and leverage that. Culturally, we're very similar, but we're different. And I think what we're seeing, if we think geopolitically, where Australians are more aligning with the United States than, say, China. I mean, it's a very difficult ragged edge the government runs, right, with selling iron ore to China and so on and so forth. But in the United States, up to 14% of their GDP, 1/4, is generated from venture-backed companies.
Yeah, is that right? Okay.
So that is a significant, more than, I don't know what the GDP is lately, but it's, trillions of dollars that is generated from those venture-backed businesses. We have to think about how we start driving that kind of approach to value creation here. How do we take some of that mining money and start deploying it? And to the credit of those companies, they do amazing work with AI and robotics and so on and so forth. So it's not like they're not doing it, but I do think there's a lot more we can do to be more innovative in that fray and embrace our allies as opposed to being. Unfortunately, the US doesn't play rugby. It could be just like New Zealand and Australian rugby, right? We hate them in the rugby, but everything else we can. Maybe the cricket. The cricket not as much, but definitely the rugby. Yeah. So that's my position on the United States.
There. Yeah, absolutely. And lastly, then to close, thinking about those that are attending, particularly the AusBioInvest thing today, whether it's from an investor point of view or for a company's perspective that's looking to raise capital, any final thoughts or things you'd hope people would take from these sessions today and start implementing?
Yeah, I think we need to have a good baseline of smart investors. We need to really make sure for the companies that they are differentiated and make sure we're not putting companies on a path to nowhere. As an example, cell therapy is very, very tough right now in the United States, right? And we had 2 cell therapy presentations just now. I don't see that changing. So what's the differentiation? What's the path to commercialization? What is the exit strategy? And, in the United States, I've been part of a cell therapy company. Just under $500 million went into that business over time to get it to where it is. We're talking to investors here looking for $8 or $10 million. There's a disequilibrium.
I see, yeah.
Right, so I do think looking at that context and trying to be competitive within that space is important. So I think that's the first thing. And then I think the second thing is a theme that I've kind of heard over the last few days is the reliance on government. Yeah. People want sovereign manufacturing and so on and so forth. There's 2 ways to look at this. I was told by a government official in Australia that I may have spent too long in the United States from what I'm about to say. And that is like, why are we even going to the government at all? Like, government shouldn't be involved. That's one philosophy. I think the alternative to that is to embrace what the government's doing. I think what New South Wales has done, they had a bit of a session yesterday. And the way they integrated research, manufacturing, and clinical development was a model that I think is very significant and valuable. Yep. And I think, if we can embrace that as an industry here and turn the wheel on that, then I think we have a competitive advantage that we can use for some of these companies too. So I think more integration. If we're going to say we need the government to do this, then we have to figure out how we integrate government to be as successful as possible.
Yeah. Okay.
My name is Arjun Goyal, and I'm the co-founder and managing director at Vida Ventures. Vida Ventures is a life sciences-focused investment firm based in the US. What we do is put together companies that are developing new medicines and invest in companies that are developing new medicines.
Amazing. And so you just literally come off the stage, then actually you've come off the plane to come onto the stage, then come off to present to the people at AusBioInvest today. Talk to me a bit about what you went through just in that session then.
Absolutely. So I spoke about 2 things. The first thing is how we at Vida transform science into new medicines. And the second thing was how, this is really a golden age in scientific innovation. This is the century of biotech, and why that's so exciting, not just for a venture firm like Vida in the US, but for investors, entrepreneurs, in Australia or wherever they are.
Yeah. I took note that, you painted this picture that, we might be coming into some challenging times, or it can be, it certainly needs resilience, but at the same time, you said there's never been a better time to be in biotech. Tell me a bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way I would frame it, short term and long term. So in the short term, the scientific innovation is as strong as it's ever been, but there are some headwinds. Those headwinds are more around the cost of capital, to access capital, such that you can fund this science and transform it into medicine. That cost has increased. It's increased because of factors beyond biotech. It's because of global interest rates. It's because of the geopolitical situation globally. It's because of some concerns in the US about drug price reform. It's concerns around FTC in the US and how that may impact on M&A in the sector. So these are, factors beyond researchers doing research and discovering new medicines. And at least in my view, those are factors that make it rocky right now for us in the next, in the last year, next maybe year or two.
Yeah.
But if you think about the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, then I think the picture is very rosy because the scientific innovation is incredibly strong, robust, is now global.
Yes.
That's not going to stop. And these macro issues are macro issues for today, but expect them to be resolved, whether it's in a year, 2 or 3, but they will be resolved.
Having that long-term view in biotech is critical, absolutely. Something else that I took note of, and I didn't quite catch it, was that, the importance of people, because something like the technology is quadrupling, but we're not quadrupling the amount of people that we have. So
absolutely.
Talk to me more about your thinking there.
So I would say, 2 things. The first thing is that, like any creative business, what it boils down to is the people. What we say is it takes a village to raise a medicine. So not at one, entrepreneur or one scientist, but a group of scientists, entrepreneurs, developers, the business guys, the finance people, they'll come together and through that process, that's where the magic happens. That's very risky. The industry is incredibly regulated for good reason, because we're dealing with human health, but it means that you need experience and a special skill set, a very specific skill set, to be effective. And we had to cater of those people from pharma and from biotech, but we haven't been able to replenish that as quickly as we've been, growing these companies or starting these companies because of how compelling the new innovation is. So in a sense, we have to catch up on the people side. We also have to figure out a way to attract the very best people into the industry from university and also laterally from other industries.
And so you've got this, Australian at heart, but you're overseas in the US, and you've got this view globally, but you've come back to Australia today, yes, for this conference, but also keeping an eye on what's going on here. What's exciting about the Australian biotech scene right now?
What's exciting, I would say the first thing, what's always been exciting, what continues to be exciting, is the quality of Australian science, medical science. Australia has been a leader in fields like oncology, immunology, virology for decades, and that continues to be the case. So that's always there. What I think has changed is the quality of the funds, the venture capitalists, their ability for them to raise more capital. There's more government money coming into the sector. And then you're finding entrepreneurs in this sector who are not typical biotech entrepreneurs, who are getting attracted to come into the sector because they want to do well by doing good, do good and do well, which is unique. They see the opportunity, they read stories about this company, that company in the US, and they feel they can do it. So I felt that the sector is maturing. It's not a group of like 5, 10, 15 people anymore making decisions. It's a lot of young people, some of the usual suspects, some new people. Just here, Andrew Forrest, one of Australia's richest mining magnates. Yeah, he's just started. He's gone into biotech as well. So I think that all is good. At least from my perspective, that's a good thing.
And lastly, we've got companies looking to raise money. We've got investors and views and perspectives at this event. What would you hope that people who attended the AusBioInvest event today take away as some of the things to think about or things to apply in there?
So I would say 3 things. The first thing is continue doing what they're doing. I've been very impressed by the quality of the companies here. Many of them are addressing important clinical needs and have raised capital. So this is the industry of today and the future. They're in the right industry. So just stick to the knitting, continue to do what they're doing. The second is, again, this is to think global. So these companies are already very global in their orientation, impressively so. But to think of capital sources globally as well, and to look at how to access capital, in other territories, whether it's the US, Europe, creatively. The second thing. And the third thing I think is it's important to give back to the biotech community here in Australia. It's a nascent community, a vibrant community, but still growing. I do see there's a strong sense of trying to help out everyone else here. That's important in the ecosystem. Sharing knowledge, sharing lessons. I think, and AusBioTech, allows for that. I do think that's important. That's certainly what we do also.
Yeah, love it. Arjun, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks a lot. Pleasure for having me.
For more content and community about technology and healthcare, visit talkinghealthtech.com.